I'm doing is legal. This is why I believe I'll receive justice in the higher court.
He hit more to right and right center than the left. Oh, it is good! He did it! He did it!
It doesn't matter what your background is and where you come from. If you have dreams and you have goals, and that's all that really matters.
But there's only one Usain Bolt.
I owe, a lot to Charlie.
The freedom of expression that the entire world could see.
When you black, it's not a movement, it's a lifestyle. This is who we are.
Nelson Mandela made a habit of surrounding himself with world-class fighters. Whether it be the champion pugilists who he occasionally entertained in residence like Roberto Duran or marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Very good. I fear his counterpunch.
Or the comrades that helped him end 46 years of apartheid in his home of South Africa. Mandela was a champion in his own right, but by comparison, he had just one adversary. And it was an opponent he'd spend half a lifetime trying to conquer. In his youth, Mandela dabbled in boxing himself, shuffling and slogging in and out as an amateur, while spending the rest of his time studying law and rising up through the ranks of the Social Democratic Party known as the African National Congress, or the ANC. In 1948, when South Africa's National Party established apartheid, a system of racial segregation that privileged whites, Mandela committed himself to its abolishment. And it was that fight that landed him 27 years in prison. Robben Island, one of 3 prisons Mandela occupied, helped him gain a better understanding of the power of sport through the creation of a prison football league, helping Mandela foster healthy relationships and a sense of competition. Upon Mandela's release from prison in 1990, he was appointed as president of the African National Congress, and by 1993, after much bloodshed, the ANC had made inroads with F.W. de Klerk's all-white National Party to end apartheid.
Every South African is facing a choice. Either to support constitutional change and everything which is reasonably required for its success, or to retire into the lager and prepare for an armed and bloody struggle.
For their efforts, both Mandela and de Klerk were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, but not before the democratic process was threatened after well-known ANC activists were assassinated. Those tragic events ultimately proved a turning point in the negotiation process, with the African National Congress winning the next democratic election in 1994. Leaving Nelson Mandela as the new president of South Africa and the nation's first black head of state. Cricket and football are South Africa's most popular team-oriented sports, along with rugby union. And by his own admission, Nelson Mandela wasn't a fan of rugby, acknowledging most of the rules were a mystery to him. But he understood the wonderment of the Springboks, particularly for South Africa's white population. One year into his presidency in 1995, Mandela attended a South Africa match and witnessed firsthand the segregation of blacks who were cheering vehemently against the home side. Mandela, the eternal optimist, knew this had to change. The most prestigious tournament held in world rugby is the World Cup, a competition held every 4 years, which South Africa didn't compete in from its inception in 1987 through to 1991 due to anti-apartheid boycotts. South Africa successfully bid to host the World Cup in 1995. And for Mandela, it was an opportunity to put on a show of unity with the Springboks grouped in Pool A alongside Australia, Canada, and Romania. Australia's Wallabies were the defending champions, and Mandela knew his Chargers had a challenge on their hands.
And you know that they are very hungry for victory. The Australians have reached the top, but we have not. And that might be decisive tomorrow. I have never been so proud of our boys as I am.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's exciting. The guys are really thrilled. We were standing inside having photographs taken with the president. Shows you the hype. And we respect him as a great leader. And his visit here has honored us. So tomorrow we know there's one guy in the stand that we have to play for, and that's the president.
Under the motto, one team, one country, South Africa's Springboks did indeed do their president proud, defeating Australia 27-18 in their first pool match before Mandela, dressed in a team jersey, watched on as his team made history against New Zealand's All Blacks in a gripping final, sealing victory in extra time 15-12. As F.W. de Klerk later put it, the 1995 Rugby World Cup final was the moment Mandela won the hearts of millions of white rugby fans. As South Africa's black population slowly discovered a passion for the Springboks, nothing could quell their love for Bafana Bafana, the moniker of the South African national football team. In 1996, the nation had the privilege of hosting and winning the 20th edition Africa's Premier Football League Championship, the Cup of Nations. And after making another successful tilt at hosting a global sporting event, South Africa nailed its biggest bid in 2004, the 2010 FIFA World Cup. With a frail Mandela led through the crowd in Zurich before emotionally standing, arms raised in front of the World Cup trophy. It stirred up memories of Robben Island, with football and Mandela triumphant once again. No athlete, however, captivated a young Nelson Mandela more than Muhammad Ali. Considered by many as the greatest sportsman of the 20th century, Ali retired with a 56-5 record. 37 knockouts and a remarkable 19 title defenses. And Ali, like Mandela, also sacrificed everything to fight racial injustice and bring attention to the civil rights movement. It was Ali's wish to one day fight in Nelson Mandela's South Africa. But as Parkinson's disease began to ravage his body late in his career, that wish was handed to 29-year-old daughter Layla in 2007, who defended her WBC and IBF super middleweight titles against South Africa's Gwendolyn O'Neal at Emperor's Palace in Johannesburg.
You know, he kept going on about my dad, and I said, "You're a great man too." And he said, "Oh, well, I don't know." And I said, "That's the same thing my dad said."
Nelson Mandela passed away in 2013, aged 95. Muhammad Ali just 3 years later in 2016. And while boxing always held a place close to Mandela's heart, he was a supporter of any sport that helped fans from across the world come together.
Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair.
From South Africa's wins at the 1995 Rugby World Cup and 1996 Africa Cup of Nations to hosting the 2010 FIFA World Cup, the unity that sport brought to Mandela's legacy signified one thing: segregation, because of skin color, has no place in the world of sport, on or off the pitch. You'd think that measuring in at a whopping 6'10" tall and having a defensive game style that could turn a game in an instant, the sport of basketball would be yours for the taking. But throw in being a Black American during the 1950s and 60s and living in a hotbed of civil unrest, the task becomes a hell of a lot more difficult. That is, unless, of course, you're basketball revolutionary Bill Russell, an 11-time NBA champion with the Boston Celtics and hero to America's ongoing fight against racial injustice.
I should also say, it's not lost on me or anybody in this room that there's an enormous amount of racial tension in this country, an enormous amount of social injustice. And Bill, you probably remember this, but the first All-Star game that took place in Los Angeles was in 1963. You were the MVP. And then, of course, the Celtics went on to win a championship that year. But maybe even more importantly, then in the summer of 1963, you stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial when Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And so, to me, there's this direct through line from players like Bill Russell, roughly 55 years ago, to LeBron and Kevin Durant speaking out today on issues that are important to them.
Born in 1934, William Felton Russell grew up in Monroe, Louisiana, in America's segregated South. But when World War II broke out, the family settled into the projects of Oakland, California, and into a life of poverty, where Bill's dad became his hero. Older Russell had a strict but fair influence and kept the family safe. But when young Bill discovered basketball, the kudos was shared with George Meekin of the Minneapolis Lakers, a 6'10" pioneer of American professional basketball. Surprisingly, as a kid, the game of basketball didn't come easy to Bill Russell. He lacked polish. But once he began mastering the skills that went into having the NBA's MVP trophy eventually named in his honor, he upped the ante and began blocking shot after shot, creating offense from his own defense and influencing the game like no other. At high school, Bill Russell developed a spellbinding defensive style and jumped to block shots in a manner never seen before. He attended the University of San Francisco after being offered a scholarship in 1953, punching what Bill considered to be his ticket to escape the poverty and the racism he'd become so accustomed to. But he was wrong. Russell was selected at USF, along with 2 other Black Americans, Hal Perry and future Boston teammate and NBA Hall of Famer K.C. Jones, with the 3 becoming the first Black trio to feature in a college starting lineup. And it wasn't long before racial discrimination reared up at a 1954 all-college tournament, where each were denied hotel accommodation in Oklahoma City due to their color. But any reservations Russell, Perry, and Jones may have had over racial intolerance coming from their teammates were dismissed when the entire team chose to stay together in a vacant college dormitory. The experience helped galvanize the playing group and led to 2 straight college championships in 1955 and 1956. In the 1955 season, Russell averaged 21.4 points and 20.4 rebounds, leading his team to an almost flawless season of 28 wins and 1 loss. Russell had put together one of the great college seasons of all time, but perhaps it was too good. He won the NCAA's Player of the Year, the Final Four's MVP, and first-team All-American. But the National Collegiate Athletic Association then initiated a number of rule changes, known as Russell's Rules, to help restrict his powerful influence on the game. In the history of basketball, only 4 players, George Mikan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and Russell, have had rules instituted to prevent them from scoring. But altering the game's guidelines wouldn't stop Russell's influence. Just a year later, he led the USF to the perfect season in 1956, with Russell averaging 20.5 points and 21 rebounds, and an impeccable 29-0 record. At USF, Russell was also noted for his efforts in the high jump. One of his highest leaps on record occurred at the West Coast Relays event, with Russell clearing 2.6 meters to equal Charlie Dumas, a future Olympian. Both men made it to the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, but Russell left high jump glory to Dumas, instead focusing on captaining USA basketball to a 4th consecutive gold medal.
Allyson Felix was the 200 meters Olympic champion at London in 2012, after silvers in Athens and Beijing. She's been 3 times world champion in the 200 and once in the 400, the only woman to win world titles in both. At her 4th Games in Rio, she missed 400 gold by the barest of margins. Now add the stamina and versatility which has taken her to an incredible relay record, 5 Olympic golds and 9 more world titles. The result? With 19 gold and 27 medals overall, Allyson Felix tops Jamaicans Usain Bolt and Merlene Ottey as the most decorated Olympic and World Championship athlete of all time.
Olympic Park, another game site.
If it wasn't for the Olympics, Bill Russell could have turned professional sooner. He was drafted by legendary Boston Celtics coach Red Auerbach in 1956, but chose to exercise his right as an amateur athlete to attend the Melbourne Games. When he did return, however, for his 1956-1957 NBA rookie season, he immediately set about cementing himself as a champion of the game. His career spanned 13 years, from 1956 to 1969, and during that time, Russell was a 5-time MVP, a 12-time NBA All-Star, and along with Coach Auerbach, became a beacon for a Celtic dynasty that won 11 NBA championships, 8 of those straight. The game had never seen someone as strong, quick, intense, or as intelligent. And he was just as unrelenting in his pursuit of civil rights for Black Americans. In 1961, Russell and his black teammates sat out a game against the St. Louis Hawks after being refused service at a coffee shop in Lexington, Kentucky. In 1967, he was an integral part of the Cleveland Summit, a meeting of influential black athletes supporting boxer Muhammad Ali in his refusal to be drafted to the Vietnam War. And a year earlier, Russell had again furthered the legacy of Black Americans in basketball with his appointment as not just the first black coach of the NBA, but the first playing coach in wake of Red Auerbach's retirement from the Celtics. Over the next 2 seasons, Russell put together a 102-62 regular season record, while leading Boston to back-to-back NBA titles in 1968 and 1969, breaking down another barrier and paving the way for the cavalcade of modern-day black coaches.
I don't anticipate any problems with the guys, because one thing that we've always had in the Celtics is mutual respect. And we think that's the most necessary ingredient for a winning combination.
And when a reporter naively asked Russell if, as the first black coach of a major league sport, could he do the job impartially without any racial prejudice in reverse, Russell was emphatic in his response.
Yes, because the most important factor is respect. In basketball, we respect the man for his ability, period.
Putting it simply, Bill Russell is the most successful player in NBA history. And to put it mildly, what he was able to achieve for Black America through such an era of racism and discrimination is profound. It's why in NBA basketball, when you think of the game's most valued player, you think of Bill Russell.